The sharp clink of a silver spoon against a crystal wine glass cut through the clatter of silverware at our Thanksgiving dinner. Jenna, my younger sister, stood up at the head of the table, her face glowing under the chandelier, beaming as if she had just won an Oscar. She flipped her perfect blonde curls over her shoulder, scanned the room, and paused on me with a half smile full of pity. "Everyone," her voice chimed, "Mom and Dad just announced some amazing news. They are signing the deed to this entire house over to me. And Emily, she won't be getting anything." The room erupted. Cheers, thunderous applause, and piercing whistles from my uncles filled the air. A relative shouted, "It's about time. Congratulations, Jenna." My dad, sitting nearby, slapped my mom on the back, both of them grinning as if a massive weight had been lifted off their shoulders. No one looked at me, or if they did, it was only to see how I would crumble. But I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just sat there, smiling. A cold, quiet smile, like the surface of a lake before a storm hits. They were celebrating a victory, unaware that they were standing on a landmine, and I was holding the detonator. I slowly set my fork down on the china plate. The metal clatter was dry and loud enough to cut through the laughter nearby. I looked up, locking eyes with my dad, the man who had been avoiding my gaze all evening. "Dad?" I said, my voice soft but sharp as a scalpel. "Should I tell them the truth, or will you?" The smile on my dad's face vanished instantly. His complexion went from rosy to sheet white in a split second. Jenna froze, the wine glass in her hand wobbling. In that moment, the silence that blanketed the room was so heavy you could hear the ticking of the antique clock in the hallway. Everyone knew something terrible was about to happen. Before I take you into the chaos that followed that silence, tell me, where are you listening to this story from? Have any of you ever sat at a dinner table with relatives who only wanted to use you? My name is Emily Nolan, and this is how I taught my family a lesson about the price of betrayal. If you looked at our old Christmas cards with the matching sweaters and manufactured smiles, you'd think we were a model happy family from the Midwest. But rotting families like mine don't break apart with screaming or violence. They crack in dead silence, in cruel choices about who gets heard and who gets ignored. My whole life, I lived in the invisible zone, where people only remember you when they need a tool or a wallet. Jenna, on the other hand, never knew darkness. She was the typical golden child, bright, loud, and programmed to be the center of the universe. I grew up watching my parents pour all their resources, money, and affection into Jenna like they were watering a rare plant. Ballet classes, expensive summer camps, private tutors, things that, whenever I asked for them, the answer was always, "We can't afford it." I didn't hate Jenna for the favoritism. I just learned a cold lesson early on. I had to build my own lifeboat because no one in this house was going to throw me a life preserver. When I moved to Chicago to build my own career, my parents called me selfish, cold, and distant. Meanwhile, Jenna stayed close to home, continuing to live off their safety net every weekend. Yet she was praised as the dutiful daughter, the perfect mold they had created. Before we dive into the cruel trap they set, I want to ask you something. Pause for a second and comment below. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own home? Sharing your story helps me and this community know we aren't alone in this fight. Leave your story in the comments. However, I still went back for the holidays, not for my parents, but for Grandma Evelyn. She was the only one in the Nolan line with sharp eyes that saw through this family theater. When she hugged me at the door, it wasn't an obligatory hug. It was recognition. She would pat my cheek, her eyes stern but proud, and whisper, "You're stronger than those fools think, Emily." She didn't know that those very words were the fuel that kept me patiently sharpening my weapons until this very night. The empty chair next to me today wasn't an accident. It all really started 6 months ago, on a sweltering Saturday in June. Mom called me home urgently, her trembling voice making me think someone was dying. But the only thing dying in that house was their morality. When I walked in, Dad was already sitting at the dining table, a thick file spread out like a business presentation. Mom sat next to him, wearing a stiff smile as if her face muscles hurt from stretching too hard. The air reeked of desperation clumsily covered up. "Sweetheart," Dad started, sliding the file toward me. "We're refinancing the house to get a better interest rate. We just need a simple signature from you to speed up the process. You won't have to worry about a thing. Just a signature." In my family, when they say simple, it means a deadly trap is waiting to snap shut. I flipped through the pages. Too many lines blacked out. Too many numbers that didn't add up. The intuition of a neglected child, a survival instinct I'd honed over years, was screaming a warning. "I'll take this back to Chicago to let my lawyer look it over," I said calmly, closing the folder. Mom's smile cut out immediately, like someone flipped a breaker. Dad lunged forward to snatch the papers back, moving so fast he knocked over a glass of water, but I pulled it away in time. "It's just a formality. Why do you have to complicate things?" he snapped, sweat beading on his forehead. But I left with that file. The next morning, my lawyer called. She didn't say hello, just went straight to the point in a cold voice. "This isn't refinancing, Emily. This is a transfer of liability. This house is carrying 2 mortgages and is 6 months behind on payments. If you sign, you don't own the house, you own their debt." In that moment, something inside me shattered, then froze over permanently. They didn't call me home because they missed me. They were drowning, and they wanted to use me as a life raft, pushing me down so they could float. After I refused to sign that financial death sentence, the tension between my parents and me became as tight as a live wire. We didn't talk about the file or the debt. Calls became rare, shrinking into meaningless small talk about the weather, as if polite conversation could fill the sinkhole swallowing the house. But I knew they wouldn't stop. Drowning people will grab onto anything that floats, even if they have to drown someone else. And then I saw the signal on social media. Jenna started posting cryptic photos. A picture of her standing on our parents' porch, holding a set of keys, a sunny smile with the caption, "Ready for big changes. Hasha, homeowner. Kasha, blessed." My heart tightened, not out of jealousy, but out of cold pity. When they couldn't trick the smart daughter, they shifted targets to the favored daughter. They were exploiting Jenna's vanity to slip a noose of debt around her neck, disguising it as the glittering gift of an inheritance. I didn't call to warn Jenna immediately. Words are cheap, and in this family, I was always the jealous one. I needed something sharper than words. I needed legal proof. I accessed the county's public property records myself. The blue light of my computer screen in my dark Chicago apartment revealed the naked truth my parents were trying to hide. Not just one mortgage, but 2. The second one was a secret loan with predatory interest rates. The countdown to foreclosure was ticking away. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in front of my printer, the whirring sound steady like a knife being sharpened. I started assembling the folder. Copies of overdue payments, foreclosure warning letters, and a debt summary page with numbers in screaming red. I didn't intend to humiliate them. I was simply preparing a weapon to ensure that when they tried to bury me or my sister under that mountain of debt, I would be the one holding the shovel. On Thanksgiving morning, I drove back to my childhood home with that thick folder sitting quietly on the passenger seat like an uninvited guest. The sky was gray, heavy with snow, reflecting my mood perfectly. Before killing the engine, I looked at my phone screen and drafted a short text to the bank investigator I had secretly contacted the week before. "They're home. Come when the main course is served." I hit send. No turning back now. Mom met me at the door with a hug so tight it was suffocating, smelling strongly of expensive perfume mixed with the sweat of anxiety. "You look great," she said, her voice an octave higher than usual. "Jenna will be so happy to see you." "Here," she said. "Jenna, not us." Just one pronoun was enough to draw the battle lines. Inside, the dining room was set like a stage play. Crisp white tablecloths, polished crystal glasses reflecting the candlelight. But one detail hit me immediately. The chair next to me was gone. Not pushed away, but completely non-existent. The message was clear. In their picture of the future, there was no longer a seat for me. I caught Grandma Evelyn's eye from her usual spot. She gave a slight nod. Very subtle, almost imperceptible. It was an ally's signal. She knew what was happening, and she was waiting for me to flip the board. I sat down, my hand brushing the edge of my canvas tote bag to feel the thickness of the folder inside. The papers rustled against the fabric, a dry, crisp sound. If they wanted to turn this dinner into a performance of fake family love, I was ready to be the most ruthless critic. I wouldn't play the silent extra anymore. Tonight, I was rewriting the script. When Jenna stood up and tapped her silver spoon against the wine glass, that clinking sound was like the bell signaling the start of the show. She stood there, glittering in a sequined dress, hair perfectly curled, wearing the pearl necklace Grandma gave her. She looked exactly like a princess preparing to be crowned over a kingdom I had paid for in blood and tears. "Mom and Dad have just decided to sign the house over to me," Jenna announced, her voice ringing through the dining room, ensuring no one missed a single word. "And Emily, she won't be getting anything." The room exploded before the cruel meaning of her words could sink in. Cheers, applause, and whistles. Someone even slapped my dad on the back, as if congratulating him on shedding a burden. My mom dabbed at the corner of her eye, playing the role of the emotional mother on her daughter's big day perfectly. I didn't touch my wine. I didn't even blink. I just looked straight at Jenna and smiled. Not a smile of blessing, nor a smile of resignation. It was the smile of someone standing on the shore watching the Titanic sail straight toward an iceberg I had quietly placed there. I slowly set my fork down on the china plate. "Dad," I spoke up, my voice light but cutting through the noise like cold barbed wire. "Should I tell them the truth or will you?" The effect was instant. The room fell into a dead silence, so heavy I could hear the water bubbling in the old radiator. My dad's hand slipped, his fork hitting his plate with a jarring clang that echoed off the walls. The smile on Jenna's face distorted. "Tell us what?" she asked, her voice hardening. Around the table, relatives started leaning forward, smelling the scent of a scandal. Grandma Evelyn let out a sharp breath, crossed her arms and smirked slightly, as if she had been waiting a decade for this moment. I reached into my bag, pulled out the thick black folder and placed it on the oak table. I didn't open it yet. I just let it sit there, black and ominous, like a silent threat. "Before everyone raises a glass to congratulate Jenna on the house," I said, eyes never leaving my dad, "everyone should probably know the exact price of this gift." My dad tried to force a laugh, a twisted and pathetic smile like melting wax. "Emily," his voice trembled with a mix of fear and weak threat, "don't ruin the mood." "Aren't you ashamed?" I interrupted. My voice didn't rise, but its weight crushed his resistance instantly. "Aren't you ashamed to decide to sign the house over to your golden girl but forget to mention the massive mountain of debt attached to it?" All eyes turned to my dad like arrows. Jenna stiffened as if someone had tightened an invisible rope around her neck. "What debt?" she snapped, her voice cracking with panic. I slowly opened the folder. The rustle of paper in the silent room sounded like a knife grinding against stone. I slid a document toward the center of the table right in front of Jenna. The summary line I had highlighted stared everyone in the face. "They are behind on loan payments," I said, every word clear as if reading a death sentence. Not one, but 2 mortgages. The second one was taken out in secret without telling anyone. This house isn't an inheritance, Jenna, it's a shipwreck. The bank is sending the foreclosure notice in a few weeks. My mom covered her mouth to stop a sob, her face drained of blood. My dad turned purple with rage and shame. Jenna blinked rapidly, as if her brain refused to process the information. That's not true. That's impossible. They would tell me if... Did they tell you the house comes with over $100,000 in debt? I asked, my gaze pinning her down, cold and ruthless. That the moment you sign those transfer papers, you become legally liable for every cent of their overdue debt and penalties? Doubt cracked Jenna's perfect face. My dad, in utter desperation, lunged forward, trying to snatch the paper off the table in front of 20 witnesses, but I was faster. I snatched the paper back with a sharp motion, causing him to lose his balance and nearly face-plant into the turkey. "Stop it," Mom begged, tears starting to smear her heavy makeup. "Please don't do this today." "Why not?" I asked, looking straight at her with dry eyes. "You two chose today to scam your own daughter." The relatives started shifting in their seats, some blatantly curious, others angry at being dragged into this mess. Aunt Diane, who always loved to pry, was the first to break the suffocating atmosphere. "Daniel, is what she's saying true?" My dad didn't answer. His jaw was clenched so tight I thought I heard a crack. My mom had buried her face in a napkin, shoulders shaking. Their silence was the clearest answer. Jenna looked at our parents, then at me, eyes wild. "But they said the house was mine. They said it was a gift." "It was never a gift," I said softly, my voice drifting across the table like a poisonous wind. "It was their escape hatch. They needed someone naive enough to carry the debt. First, they tried to trick me. When I refused, they picked you." Tyler, Jenna's perfect fiancé who had been silent until now, suddenly pushed his chair back and stood up. The screech of the chair legs against the wood floor was ear-piercing. He took a step back, looking at Jenna as if she were a contagious disease he needed to avoid. "You told me the house was paid off," Tyler said, his voice shaking not with sadness, but with the anger of a man realizing he almost got played. "You said we'd have a clean start." Jenna reached out to him, trembling fingers grasping at the air. "Tyler, let me explain. I didn't know." "Don't expect me to start my life on a sinking ship." He cut her off, coldly brushing off his suit sleeve as if to shake off the dust of this family. "I'm not marrying into a pile of debt." The whole room gasped as Tyler turned his back and walked straight out the front door, passing the cold turkey, passing my stunned parents, without looking back once. Jenna collapsed into her chair, black mascara running down her cheeks in pathetic streaks. My dad slammed his hand on the table, roaring at me, "You ruined everything." I looked at him, calmly checking the watch on my wrist. 8:15 p.m., right on time. "No, Dad," I replied. "I just turned on the lights. The roaches are scattering on their own." A knock on the door sounded like a judge's gavel, sharp and authoritative, cutting through the chaos in the dining room. Every head turned. My dad, still panting from his rage, frowned and shouted, "Who is it?" The door opened before he could take a step. A woman walked in, wearing a crisp gray suit, a small badge on her belt glinting under the chandelier. Her face was calm, the scary kind of calm belonging to professionals who are used to seeing families destroyed by money. I took a small sip of water. Sarah Evans, the bank investigator, had arrived, punctual to the second. "Mr. and Mrs. Nolan?" she asked, her voice devoid of emotion, strictly business. "I'm Sarah Evans, an investigator from the Credit Risk Management Department. I need to speak with you regarding mortgage files and an urgent report of financial fraud regarding this asset." The room erupted for the second time, but this wasn't cheering. It was a wave of terror. My mom nearly collapsed, gripping the table edge to stay upright. My dad shifted from angry red to the pale white of a corpse. Jenna sat motionless, clutching the tablecloth as if it were the only thing keeping her from falling into a black abyss. Why are you here at this hour? Dad whispered, his voice cracking. The investigator didn't blink, pulling out a file. We received an alert about an attempt to transfer an asset carrying bad debt to evade payment responsibility. The bank requires immediate verification. You could hear a pin drop. No one was cheering or congratulating anymore. The relatives began backing away from my parents, parting to the sides as if standing next to a roaring fire, afraid the flames would jump to them. Emily, Mom sobbed, turning to me with desperate, pleading eyes, reaching her trembling hands out. Tell her it's a misunderstanding. Please, save us. I looked at her, then at Dad, and finally stopped at Jenna, who was staring at me with hollow eyes. I didn't answer. I just sat there, breathing slowly, watching the truth finally land where it belonged. If you feel a sense of satisfaction seeing scammers exposed right at the dinner table, hit that like button right now. Help this story spread to remind everyone, the truth always finds a way to the light, no matter how deep it's buried. When investigator Sarah left with copies of the documents, the house sank into a heavy, gloomy silence, very different from the calculated silence at the start of the party. Mom tried to reach for me, but pulled back, as if afraid of being burned by the coldness radiating from me. Dad muttered in his throat that I had humiliated the Nolan name. They still didn't get it. Their honor died the moment they planned to sell out their children's future to save their own vanity. Jenna sat motionless, her smeared makeup making her look like a broken doll thrown away after losing its value. What do I do now? She whispered, her voice shattering. That was a question she should have asked herself 10 years ago, instead of waiting for our parents to pave the road. I put on my coat, the fabric rustling decisively. Jenna grabbed the hem of my coat. Don't go, I'm scared. I'm not leaving you, I replied, prying her hand off. I'm just refusing to live in their lie anymore. In the weeks that followed, my family's fake empire collapsed right on schedule. The house was seized by the bank and put up for sale. Mom and Dad were forced to move into a shabby apartment on the edge of the city, where there was no audience for their drama, no lavish parties to show off. Jenna started therapy. She calls me often, sometimes just to cry, sometimes just to be silent, learning for the first time how to live without a spotlight. And me? I learned the final lesson I should have known long ago. Speaking the truth isn't betrayal, hiding it is. Families built on a foundation of denial and exploitation will always collapse when the truth is exposed. If you've ever had to stand alone at a table full of people who call themselves family but want to drag you down, let me know where you're listening from. And after hearing my story, if you were me, what would you have done? Remember to subscribe, because justice doesn't always need to scream. Sometimes it just needs a smile and a thick folder of receipts.